Hey, it's Mike from Mike and Lodge Garage. So, I was laying in bed at 4 a.m. staring at the ceiling, as I tend to do, thinking about this cruise control circuit. Now, this is a CRC 1000. And for it to work, what it has to do is it has to know the speed you're running at. It has to be able to control the throttle, and it needs to be able to disengage, so it needs to sense the clutch or the brake action. Okay, so in looking at this, it obviously controls the throttle. And there's this nice little Y cable. It reads the speed, however, through the OBD2 port, the old Obi-Wan port here. And it does it by reading the CAN bus. Unfortunately, in thinking about it, my ECU doesn't know the speed, right? Because I did not connect a speed sensor to the transmission. Matter of fact, I left the harness laying up in here, thinking that I may need it at some point. Where'd it go? Is that it? Right there. Thinking I may need it at some point. But I didn't have it. So, yeah, this one. And it's labeled, I think it's labeled VSS. No, VEH. Speed, vehicle speed. Anyway, so I started digging into it. The ECU requires is 40 pulses per revolution and a square wave, okay? Now, then I started looking at the Bowler all-in-one harness, and those guys, they're pretty smart. They actually had this done right. So these are two independent speed outputs. You can configure each one of them independently. Now, I had them hooked together thinking they were like an LVDS high-low signal, but that's not the case. It's a simple square wave, and it can be, it's either a plus and minus 5 or a plus 10 to 0 volt square wave. So what I need to do is disconnect the purple and white. Oh, that was the other thing. I ultimately found a guy on one of the GM forums that was talking about doing this exact same setup, where he was connecting to a Dakota Digital Dash as well as an ECU and getting the feedback into the ECU. So what you have to do is disconnect the purple and white, connect that up to the purple and white on this vehicle harness right here. One of those should be purple and white, and it is. And then it says to leave the black and green disconnected. Okay, fine. Yeah, they can see it better there. So I'm going to have to change the connector on that because I don't have a mating connector either. So what I got to do is pull the purple and white back. I had hooked that to the ground on this speed input, which is dead wrong. That would have been grounding an output signal. I'm not sure how it would have loved that. The other way to do this is to get the CRC 2000, which instead of taking the speed feedback from the OBD port, it takes the speed out from the speed output from the Dakota Digital HDX box. That would have been another way to do it. Probably would have been a little cleaner, but it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to get this hooked up. But here's a schematic of what I'm talking about and how to connect this up properly, because it is kind of a weird little situation where you have 4 independently operating things, and they all kind of got to rely on each other to make this work. So I just thought I'd throw this out there because I didn't find much online about this, except for in one forum I found a guy talking about it, and what he spent a lot of time talking to Bowler and talking to GM, and ultimately figured out how to do it, which is exactly what everything points to. So I'm going to go ahead and rework this right now so that I don't have to worry about it later. I might connect a loop to the black and green wire in on that speed connector and just loop it up in here in case I need it. It'll be a lot easier to do now. And then I will connect this up and see where it goes. Okay, step one of this install for the harness is I got to get that fuse block up in there into that hole. And I might be screwed before I get started here because it's looking like I might need an extra set of hands because they cleverly put a flathead screwdriver bolt through this. I might change that. Let me see if I have a hex bolt that's that long. Yeah, looks worse than it is. That actually bolted up in there pretty nice. I was able to get the fuse panel up in. It's really tight to the e-brake light switch, but is what it is. Right now, I'm getting ready to put the front harness on, but it did recommend that if you're coming up underneath the fender to wrap it first. So that's what I'm going to do first. I'm just throwing on a sleeve and we'll go from there. All right, here's where I'm at. I have run the front harness in the engine harness and the front lights. I've just coiled up the wires for now because, well, I don't have lights. So, and like the horn wires up here, I did hook up the windshield washer pump and the brake, the brake warning light, and the starter is hooked up, and the main power feed is back to the fuse panel. So this stuff up here is pretty much done, short of lighting, and I've still got to dress and wrap a bunch of harness. So next thing I started to do was, first thing I was looking at was my ignition switch. So I've got that in there, and I've got the windshield wiper switch in place temporarily. I think I'm gonna have to pull most of them back out to wire them, and the light switch is in. So that kind of brings me to a point where I think what I'm going to do next is do the similar thing to this rear harness and dress this all the way back, at least into the trunk area, so I can start, you know, just get that out of the way and secured. Then I can go through these wires because all of those need a home, and connect up the Detroit speed variable speed wiper system, which hasn't been attached yet either. I did away with the old delete on the cigarette lighter and put in a USB port instead. Figure that's far more useful for me. But yeah, so I think we're kind of at a point. I need a couple more days to clean this rest of this wiring up. Looks worse than it is. Just keep that in mind. Don't panic, Dad. Anyway, we got this. It's actually really nice because every wire has the circuit number, the harness, and where it's supposed to go. So makes it pretty hard to mess it up. So next step, I did find a connector to go on the back of my starter switch. I had one on the old wiring harness, so I cut that off and removed the pins. I've got new pins for it, so I'll be able to dress that all up nicely. So yeah, I'm going to start just kind of working my way through all the wiring now in here. So the Dakota Digital's pretty much done. I think there's a couple more. There's some of these wires have to go down onto that. Things like the dimmer circuit for the gauge lights and all kinds of stuff. You know, directional left, directional right. All that has to go into the Dakota Digital too. So we should be pretty close to being able to start cleaning this up for real. So I figure by the end of this next weekend, I'll have the wiring done. And the following week, we should be ready to try to start this thing. I've got a few hoses. I've still got to pressure test my fuel line. I got the stuff to do that, and I'm going to pressure test. I got the return line on the power steering still wants to weep a little bit too. So I've got to figure out what's up with that. So I'll pull that apart, test it, pressure test it, stop just putting it back in and filling it with fluid and hoping for the best. That's just not really working for me. That AN10 fitting is giving me fits, so I think it's folded the PTFE under again, but we'll explore that when the time comes. So I've tried to get all my switches in. Most of the stuff I'm going to need to wire. I got my door switches in. These were a little interesting. You have to actually adjust these. The tube here slides into the mounting ferrule. I didn't know that. First I thought they were just way too long, but then I looked at it. You can just take a number 10 socket, put it in the vise, and compress that into whatever height it really needs to be in the end. So I've got the courtesy light, the door jamb switches ready to go. Should be able to start making some real progress here. So we'll get there. Still some masking tape in there. It's got to come out. Anyway, yeah, that's going to be it for now. I'm going to keep after this, probably get it here in another couple days and get another day on it, and then we'll go see what happens. Okay, got to get back after the wiring today. I'm going to put on the big push here in the next couple days and hopefully get this thing all wired up. Really just dragging through this. But I haven't had a lot of time. I'm back and forth with work and stuff like that. So a couple things. Had a subscriber from Adam from Adam's Custom Shop. You know, I've been really struggling with audio lately. And Adam recommended these wireless ME units from Rode. And I'm going to give it a go. I have not had any luck with microphones and things like that. And some of the audio just sucks. And so I'm hoping this is better. Let me know your thoughts. Again, this is the Rode wireless ME unit. There's a collar mount, a little clip-on thing you put on your collar, and then there's a little remote that plugs into the camera, the phone in this case. So, gonna keep working on that. Hopefully, this will take care of that. Another subscriber pointed out something the other day that I'm like, wow, glad he said that. Bad Bird 2182 came back and said, dude, you really ought to think about putting your dash pad in before you get too much further along, and then put some little P-clips up underneath the dash pad and use that to route some of your wiring, because that's really up out of the way of everything, and it's going to get tight with all the AC tubes and everything else that have got to go in there, the HVAC. So I did that, put on the dash pad. Now, this is not a stock dash pad, obviously. This is a TMI. We'll get into that more when we start to get into the interior. But my concern, and he told me I was not a problem, was that I was worried that I wouldn't be able to put my instrument cluster up underneath it and that stuff. But there's actually little reliefs under there for that. So that's good. That's going to work out really nice. Dash pads in, and quite honestly, I'm really glad I did it, because I'm not sure how I would have got to those screws if I had put everything else together first. It would have been a real nightmare. So, thank you, Bad Bird. I think the guy's name is Rich. Really cool dude. He has a lot of good insight he's helped me with over the past year or so. But anyway, so now we're going to get back into it. Got to get a new work light. My drop light that I have up on the wall there with the cord just crapped out the other day. It won't come on, and rather than tear it all apart and figure it out, I just got a cordless one with the battery, and quite honestly, it's nice because I'm not fighting the cord all the time. Makes it a little harder to find. Usually with the other one, I just trace the cord down to where I left it. So hopefully this will work out pretty good. So the thing about this harness is each section is broken out into sections, and the book clearly calls out what section you're looking at. This happens to be ignition switch. It's written on the wires. I just took it and put some tape on it for quick reference, so I'm not trying to squint and look at the different wires. Like, this is the light switch. This is the instrument cluster. This is the ignition switch. This feeds the ECU for the engine. And then I got some more wires down there for the wiper controls. So I'm just going to start working my way through this. I've got everything. Everything is here. I did order a plug for the wiper control so that I can put a connector between the switch and everything else in case I have to replace that switch. But should be a pretty straightforward procedure. So I'm going to keep going and work my way through this today. And hopefully, one more bit of hardware that I have to do is I have not installed the underdash courtesy lights yet. So I got to do that first. That's this bit here. These get screwed up under the dash like this, and then the light shines down on the floor. So when you open the door, you can see something. You know, without a dome light, it makes it fun. Okay, we're getting there. Let me see if I can get you in here a little bit. So I got a lot of stuff hooked up. Everything's still in here kind of loose, but I got the light switch, the wiper switch wired up. The directional steering column switches are all wired up to that connector up there. And the ignition switch is wired. And courtesy lights are wired. So today, I'm going to start. What have I got left? Well, I've got the brake lights, brake circuits, the clutch safety circuit, instrument panel, and a few other things. And I've kind of labeled them here as I go, but I'm getting through it. I'm down to this many. That's great. So I'm going to continue on, try to get through this today as much as I can under the hood, and then work my way back into the trunk. Got up to the shop this morning and the heat was out because I'm out of gas. Apparently they didn't auto-deliver in time. So, yeah, no heat this morning. So that makes it fun. Great way to start the day. Anyway, called the propane company. They're on their way. Anyhow, let's just get to it. I did find that I had something wrong with my clutch safety circuit. It has to do double duty. And with the way these switches work, you have one that's normally open and one that's normally closed. What I'd really should have here is two that are normally closed. But that for the one circuit for the cruise control and one circuit for the starter, the starter solenoid. So I have come up with a way to fake it out, and hopefully it'll work. I will take you through that schematic when I get closer to doing that part. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now. We're making good progress here. It's a slog. It takes a long time. So I'm going to continue on and just try to keep doing what I do here and get through it. Okay, that's pretty much all terminated now. Get some light on the subject here. I haven't dressed anything yet. I'm not going to until after I get it running and I can test everything. But everything's terminated. I've got it all squared away. And except for the radio, obviously, it's not in yet. But I've still got to wire up my clutch disconnect for the cruise control. There was a slight problem with the way I had that in the schematic, so I've got to redo that. And I'll probably do that in a separate thing because it's kind of a pain. You got it normally open, normally closed, and you want it to close when you push in the clutch, and the starter solenoid runs through that switch. So fine. But that means you have a normally closed one that is open when the clutch is in that you have to use somehow for the clutch disconnect. So I found a way to do it. I have to order a couple of resistors to make that work, but I will kind of diagram that out, show it to you. It's kind of weird. But everything else is in. Glove box lights in. Courtesy lights are in. Dash is wired. Gauges are wired. Everything should fit. I think I got plenty of room to run my hoses for the AC, although this one over here is looking tight. But I'll test fit a lot of that stuff next. Next thing I was doing was running this harness back here to the tail section, and I'm not quite sure how it comes up through here without getting pinched. So I've got a message into Encyclopedia Firebird there, Louie at First Generation Garage, and he should be able to help me out, tell me where this has got to go. I'm sure he has some pictures of it. And then I got to break out the wires from here to go in under for the pump. I'm not sure exactly how those get routed. And, this is all part of the problem when you don't tear the thing down yourself, right? So I will lean on some friends for that, and I am sure I will get the appropriate information shortly. And then I've just got to loop up my wires back here, get everything tucked away. I did get this. I did buy one of these. It's a non-kickback fuel filler. I will share that when I get to point to ready to put it in. But the idea is, you don't want to be filling this thing up and having gas kick back and flow all down the paint. That just wouldn't be good. So this is the little pull handle that my son and I made on his 3D printer for the gas lid. It's the logo that I made. So anyway, yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Like I said, I'm feeling pretty good. I got most of that in there. Got some cleanup to do. I got a ton of extra wires and crap in here. I'll get all this cleaned up and get some more wire ties in there and just leave everything loose until I'm ready. But I feel like I've got the majority of the heady stuff done at this point. So still got to wire the fuel tank, the pump, the gauge, the top pump, and then the tail section. So I will get that done tomorrow.